Hello Code Queens, my name is Irene and I'm your instructor. Today we're going to be using the knowledge that we have been getting in the previous sessions to create a to-do app. This app is going to consist of a person inputting an item name, the time. It will be logged into a to-do list. Once a person has finished a task, he or she can tick the one that they have finished. Which they have finished will go into the items done list. The ones which are not yet done will go into the pending items. Before we go any further, these are the prerequisites. I expect the one watching this to know some basic knowledge of HTML, CSS, the basics of Bootstrap, Git and GitHub. So before we start, log into GitHub and then create a new repository. Tap on new and then repository name, call it to do. Keep it public and then create the repository. And then copy the link to your repository, tapping this icon. Once you're there, clone your repository using the git clone command and then paste the link to your repository. You can open the repository by going to open folder, which is on your desktop, and it's called to do. Okay, so we have that to do here. Add a new file. So add a new file and call it index.html. Remember that this is the page that we're going to create. So this is a shortcut for creating the boilerplate HTML code. Put an exclamation mark and then press enter. Our title is going to be to do app. We are going to be using Bootstrap in our project, so go to the Bootstrap website and then to include Bootstrap we are going to be using this link. Copy the link that is going to include Bootstrap into our project and then paste it in your head tag here before the title. You can paste it there. So we are going to start with in our body we are going to have a row. So we are going to have a div, give it a class of row, just like this, and then we shall have another div. Let's give it a class of So all these were covered in our Bootstrap lesson, so I expect everyone to be following, and in case you are lost somewhere, I request you to visit the tutorials that were made before. So we are going to have a form inside this div. We're going to be having a form and we shall have our heading. We are going to give it a heading of H3 and we are going to make it bold, and our app is going to be called to do list. Yes, you can name it anything you want, but I'll give it this. So we're going to have a div class called form hook, So let's add a comment up here. Remember, commenting is good because it gives the other developers a chance to follow what you're doing. And then we're going to say this takes in the to-do list content. So let's add a label. So let's call this item, and then the label is going to be item. Then we shall have an input type, which is going to be of type text. And the class is going to be form control. Let's give it an ID, which is item. Okay, so far we are working on this part of our to-do application. So as you can see, item name and the time are both taking in a label and the text input. So we can just copy the code for item name and its input field and then paste it here, then make changes to only the content. So we can paste it here, and then we have our to-do time. We'll call it to-do time. This is the time. Give it an ID, and its ID will be time. So we are left with a button. Let's add a button to submit. So we shall have button type. The button type, we can call it submit, and then give it a class for identification, just as we talked about when we were dealing with selectors. So this will be the selector. Let's call it button primary. Give it an ID. So we shall use a class selector here, and then give it an ID. We'll call it save, and then the button will have register. So that makes the end of our form. That's the first part, and then when we run it using live server, this is what we shall get. This is what we have so far. So a person inputs what they are going to do, for example, cooking, and then the time that they are going to do what they are going to do. And then when he or she clicks on register, it has to put this item in the to-do list, the item and then the time. So let's go to the next part. So let's add a section for our to-do list items that have already been entered into the form. So we can do this by creating a div, giving it a class, and then styling it using our CSS that we have learned in the previous sessions. And then we can give it a title. For example, let's give it H2, make it bold, and then call it to-do list. As you can see, so far we have done this part, and then we are left with we have to do the to-do list, which takes in the item name that has already been entered by the user and also log the time in the table. Let's get started. So we're going to say table class, give it a class and call it table. Then we're going to make our table to be bordered. Okay, so we have our table head. You can just write th, and then we have, this is the table row. So we are logging our item, and then we can just copy this, paste it here, and then this is going to take in our to-do time. So we're going to have our table body. Give it an ID called table body. Let's see, give it an ID called table body. That can work. Remember, we are going to use JavaScript to make our work dynamic. Remember, we say JavaScript is a scripting language, and so create a file and call it index.js. Remember, the file extension has to be .js and not anything else. Any mistake that you make, it directly influences the output of your. At the very end, before the closing tag of the body, we are going to link our JavaScript to our HTML. So it says script source is equal to /main.js. Remember, we had named our item the input item, and we gave it an ID of item. And then when we went to do time, we gave it an ID of time. Then for the submit button, we gave it an ID of save. So we are going to be referencing to this in our JavaScript. Let's get started. We shall declare a constant and call it item input, and use this JavaScript document dot get element by ID. We called it item, so we shall use, remember to use the exact spelling of the IDs that you used, or else you will not be able to reference your elements in JavaScript. So let's do the same for the rest of the elements, where we have the time, the submit button, and then the table body. Remember to use the same ID spelling just as you declared in HTML. Alright, so once we have that, we would like to pick the values. When a person inputs something, we want to store it directly to the table. So we shall use a constant get element value, and then it's going to be an array function which will take in that element, and then let's use an array function here. If you have your comfortable with using arrow functions, I advise you to visit the tutorials before this one and then get acquainted with all this before you proceed with this tutorial. So we get the element by value. So when a person registers, so on button click, what would we like to do? Remember, JavaScript makes all our work dynamic. So we gave it save button. We are using this, the constants that we declared. So save button dot, we're going to add an event listener to the button, and so we shall call it on click. What happens when a person clicks the button? So we shall give it this is going to be event, an arrow function here, and it shall implement this. So it shall implement and prevent the default behavior of So after this, we would like to pick the value of the first name of the task name. So we can declare a constant, give it maybe item value. It's always advisable to give them names that reflect what they do so that you can easily follow your work when you go through it again, or when other programmers are reviewing your work, and it will make your code more efficient. Remember, sometimes you may not be the one on your team who is doing your work. So let's declare another variable, constant, and we call it to do time value. So when a time value is passed on to this element, we're going to get the element by value. Yes, get element value, and then we'll call it to do time input this. So you can just copy this, copy and paste this all throughout. So to this point, what we are doing is that we are making sure that whenever a person enters the task name or the to-do task name, it has to be got and then stored in the constant, and then when it's stored in the constant, we shall be able to display it to the user and include it in the table. So const table, let's call it table row, and do document dot get element dot create element. So this one creates the element from the text input. So we shall have a table row. We shall create a new table row every time someone enters a task. A new table row will be created. So we can have another constant called item ID, and then this will do document dot create element. Yes, so we shall create another element, and it shall be table data. So the item ID, okay, so we are going to turn it into HTML. So we can use dot in HTML is equal to item value. So we shall get the string that the user inputs and then pass it into the table by creating a new row, and then it shall be displayed in that row. So table row dot append child, this is where we put append child. So I'll explain more on what append child means. So okay, So what append child does is that it gets the name of the last element which has been input, and it's added to the other elements as the last one. Yes, so every time you create a list, they will be put in order, one after the other. So the last one will appear at the bottom of that list. So the same is going to apply with our to-do time. When you're going to declare a constant called, we're going to have to do, yes, time table data, and then assign it document.create an element. So we are creating an element, and it's going to be a table row. Okay, I hope you're following along. So we're going to use this, and then we shall have to do time table data .inner HTML, and then get this value and assign it to it. So it's going to be to do time table data, then its value. We shall use append child, so we shall have table row dot append child. So we shall append time and then pass to it to do time ID. So this is going to be added to the table body. So our table body, use append child once again, then say this is going to be our table row. Yes, so let's add a simple CSS file, call it index.css, and then when you open it, just give the body to have a font size of, just change the font size, and then we'll beautify more later on as we continue in the next step of 16 pixels. So what happens when we run our app? So we are going to link our CSS in the HTML file, and then remember to put the link relationship, which is style sheet, and then the source, which is index.css. Alright, then let's run our HTML file and see what we shall get. So if I say open with live server, it automatically opens in my browser, and when I add an item, let's say washing at 3 p.m. and then I click on register, it's not displaying in the to-do list items. Okay, now we need to debug our code. So when you go through all this, you'll notice that our script is named main, and yet here it's named index. So we made a mistake, so you have to name it exactly as it is. So index.js. So let's run our code again and see what happens. So once we refresh and then we say eating, I'm going to eat at 1 p.m. register. See, now the append child, it creates a new row, and then it puts the item and the item, and then time and a to-do time. If I want to add a new to-do task and it's 7 p.m., it will create a new row and then add it at the bottom of our list. However, when you see this and also what we have in our design, we have to put the items which are done and then the pending items plus the calendar and the reminder. So this brings us to the end of our part 1 in building this application, and then we shall continue. Our assignment would be that every time I add a new item, I have to come and manually delete the old one. So the assignment is for it to automatically delete what I have put in my register. See, after adding all this, it still remains there, and I have to delete this, then come delete the time. So that's going to be an assignment, and I'll see you next time in part 2 of this tutorial. Thank you very much.